Recently, I've been accused by many people of making dark, sad, or even outright depressing videos. So, you know what? Let's talk about balls. Specifically, ball games, or marble games, a hyper-specific genre of video game where you control a ball in a 3D space and try to get to the end of a map. This is interesting, I promise. The first thing that's interesting about it is the time period that the majority of these games were made, the early 2000s. 2001 was a very colorful time for games. The 90s were a time of transition from 2D to the brand new world of 3D animated graphics. Just like technology in nearly every other sector of the world, humanity was starting to see just how wide the horizon was for progress. This 90s to 2000s era is fascinating to me because of just how many weird things came out of it, but it all stemmed from an overwhelming optimism. Super Monkey Ball released originally to arcades in 2001, and in terms of ball games, it's honestly a really strange start. The original game was sponsored by Dole, yes, the fruit company linked to the annexation and overthrow of Hawaii, and its gameplay feels actively hostile towards the player. While you functionally control the ball, you really control the entire stage around it, tilting it in different directions to bring your monkey wherever you can manage to take it. That being said, actually controlling the stage is much easier said than done. The ground tilts on a hair trigger, making slow and refined movement a near impossibility. The camera constantly anchors to wherever your ball is moving, making small adjustments incredibly frustrating to do, especially with the amount of precision needed to beat a huge amount of the levels in the game. Having been made originally for arcades, its goal was to make whoever was playing lose, so levels consisted more often of tightropes than roads. Both going up and down in Super Monkey Ball is uniquely hard in their own ways. Going down ramps gives you a borderline unmanageable amount of speed, forcing you to hit the brakes in order to stay on the level at all. Uphills, on the other hand, make it so that any horizontal movement gets way harder to control, forcing you to make corrections in a game that constantly punishes you for making corrections. Every level has a harsh timer, making sure you don't have the privilege to line things up or think over your decisions, and every time you fall off, you get to see a live-action replay of your monkey falling desperately into the endless skybox, where it'll be falling for the rest of its monkey life. The fact that you're a ball in this game is not an advantage, it's the entire reason for its difficulty. Super Monkey Ball relishes in the limits that it gives you. And yet, despite all of this, the aesthetic of the game is amazing. Naturally, for a game developed by Sega, it adopted the cheerfully vibrant and colorful look of their other works. While technology was more than far enough along at this point to make decently immersive worlds, Super Monkey Ball is transparently a video game, almost too intensely a video game. It overwhelms you with stats and life counters and timers and maps and text, feeding you an endless stream of information on top of the already hectic and stressful gameplay. To this day, it's a lot to handle, and it's served as a long-living formula, with dozens of sequels being made in the decades since the original game's release. But Sega were not the only ones trying to hop on some balls. A game was released in the December of 2002, coming pre-installed with the newest wave of iMacs. Its name was Marble Blast, being renamed later to Marble Blast Gold when it was updated in the May of 2003. While keeping a lot of the style we see in Super Monkey Ball, this game was instead designed for PCs and not arcades, naturally making the game a much easier experience. The vast majority of levels in Marble Blast Gold are absolutely barren. There's not a single piece of decoration, every single block and platform placed is for the explicit purpose of rolling on or bouncing against. Most levels are essentially skeletons, and yet it doesn't feel empty or soulless. These levels are full of life, with moving platforms and hazards and power-ups. You're surrounded by pure emptiness, with any mistakes sending you off the edge, but instead of feeling like a void, it's a bright blue sky. The somewhat generic music, crunched sound effects, and cartoony repeating textures give the entire game a deeply amateur feeling, like you're being shown an arts and crafts project that took a single day to make. Even falling off the edge barely presents any danger, you're simply reset to the beginning of the stage before you can even register what happened. An invisible cushion protecting you from the infinite nothingness that would otherwise be your marble's punishment. The actual level design feels far less like the developers are programming a game, but instead just showcasing all of the fun bits of physics and power-ups that they're proud to have made for you. There's a level that's literally just a race course loop to show you how the boost power-up works. There's multiple levels that are massive playgrounds for you to bounce around in, collecting gems with no real threats in sight. Even cute little warning signs and heads-up messages appear right above your marble to make sure that your objective is as clear as possible. Every level ends with fireworks, you get to name your time whatever you want. It's also light and playful. Marble Blast Gold feels more like a celebration of what can be done with video game engines than simply a video game, and it makes the whole experience feel deeply innocent. That being said, there's a lot of times where it would be really nice for it to feel more like a video game. Just like Super Monkey Ball, there are very fleeting moments where you can really take advantage of things like the momentum of the ball. Most levels are just large squares or a series of lifts, so this marble's ability to gain speed would only send it careening off the edge if you get too careless. It feels like the opposite of what a ball is supposed to do, constantly going up and slowing down when gravity wants nothing more than to pull it down and fast. At times it feels more like a platformer than a ball game, and that kinda sucks, you know? Marble Blast Gold had a sequel release in the January of 2006 for the Xbox Live Arcade called Marble Blast Ultra. Gold and Ultra are on paper the same game, but they feel very, very different to me. The marble itself is both larger and heavier, forcing you to take even longer to stop or change your momentum. The sound effects feel weightier and imply an actual material to the ball, something like glass as it squeaks when it rolls and gives a melodic dull thump when it slams into the level around you. The amateur stylings are entirely gone, feeling more like a training simulation than anything. The plucky, frantic synths in the background make you feel like you're in a digital world. Instead of a bright skybox, you're surrounded by these strange Roman numerals and lines and boxes that feel like you're in the middle of a blueprint. New surfaces have been added to the game. Ice and metal, you've been given a limited double jump. The ideas are more fleshed out. The levels feel much more designed to be a game, testing multiple sides of what a marble actually offers you. Ominous clouds clutter the bottom half of the screen, implying that where you fall is undesirable, it's a place you want to avoid. The color scheme of the game is muted, still technically colorful, but almost reserved in how it uses that color. Around the same time, games like The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess and Gears of War and Sonic 06 were hitting the shelves. Even for these fantasy settings, games were focused on realism. We were getting advanced enough in technology to truly try at pretending to be reality, even if the worlds we were making weren't really our own. And because of that, Marble Blast Ultra feels more mature as a game, for the better and the worse. In 2004, 2 years before Ultra's release, Atari came out with a spiritual counterpart to the Marble Blast series, one developed for Windows named Ballance. Even 2 years before Ultra, this game feels radically different from any other ball game at the time. The soundtrack for Ballance is mostly ambient, creepy almost, and half the time it doesn't even play. You have nothing but the sounds of the ball and the occasional wind to accompany you as you traverse this empty world. Unlike the short bursts of activity that the levels of Super Monkey Ball and Marble Blast had, the levels in Ballance are long and winding, with checkpoints along the way. You're given multiple lives due to the sheer length of these levels, with extra lives being available to grab at several points. The gameplay feels more like a puzzle game than a platforming one, using different weights of ball to meet whatever need you have at the time. You're met with not just boxes to push around, but other balls too, ones not controlled by some mysterious force like yours is. Despite the empty and almost desolate feeling to the game, however, Ballance actually tries to give some sort of logic to the world we're in. While you're still surrounded by a void, the levels don't just float in the air. Instead, they're held up by long concrete columns fading into the clouds below, presuming some kind of ground to eventually land on. The levels end with your ball being carried away on a floating platform, giving the feeling of continuity, like your little ball is traveling from one stage to the next. Some levels show a sphere of something below it, perhaps even an entire planet, implying a height to these levels too tall to even imagine. The entire game leads up to level 13, a level originally only available if you access the developer's website, and it changes the tone of the game dramatically. The level is called the Twilight Zone, and serves as the final challenge to everything the game had to offer. It's way longer than the rest of the already lengthy levels, and requires both creative thinking and solid movement to pass the onslaught of obstacles ahead of you. The end of the level, fitting to the drama, throws away any and all puzzle solving, instead giving you a series of high-speed jumps and railings up until the final spiral brings you to the finish. Unlike the rest of the levels, which end by just floating away, Ballance surprises you with a UFO abducting your ball, never to be seen again, showing evidence of actual life in what was until now a lonely experience. The urge to give life and meaning to these worlds was already present back in 2004 and would continue to grow as time went on. While not developed by the same studio, a spiritual sequel to Ballance came out in 2007 named Switchball. Also an Xbox arcade game like Marble Blast Ultra, Each level starts and ends with your ball on a moving platform, connecting every single level together as one long journey. Instead of cold concrete or just like video game floors, the world of Switchball is made of wood and rope, clear signs of actual construction from some type of living being. I call it a sequel to Ballance because it too has puzzle elements using different types of balls. You're much closer to the ground than any other game so far, being able to see clear signs of mountains and landscapes below you. Reason is given as to why these platforms are floating, with jets strapped to the sides of them. A clear progression is given to the levels, not just in difficulty but by its tone and ambience. The first levels take place in a bright blue sky among the clouds, and it feels adventurous and airy. You're learning the ropes of this brand new world and body, having fun with physics and platforming. The middle levels have a building feeling to them, with your ball getting more abilities on top of what you already know and exploring how all of it interacts. The final levels take place in this almost fiery environment, with an orange glow lighting up the entire sky around you. The music is fully matured into dramatic territory, with no more new content to show. All that's left is to test your abilities, to see how much you've already learned. Other balls move on rails to activate parts of levels completely unconnected to yourself, seemingly pushed by something or someone else. Several options of ball type are given to you in order to ask open questions, multiple ways to solve and go about the challenges ahead of you. Pathways are just a bit thinner, railways a bit more precarious, nudging closer and closer toward the uncomfortable. You're given a ball that can actually jump if powered up, and the jumps are made just long enough to make you question your positioning and momentum, stepping back before moving forward. But ultimately, it never gets too hard to win. And once you reach the final finish, the game just kind of ends. Despite the ways of the world of Switchball being explained to you, you're never really given a reason as to why you were doing any of this. As the impressiveness of new physics engines started to fade away and just become part of the industry, the genre of ball games started to fade away too. It was later used as a gimmick, a special mode or minigame in larger titles, but the novelty of rolling a ball around an environment fell away for other games and other ideas. Most of the games I've mentioned today now are abandonware, their copyright not even bothering to be updated. A relic of the past, of a time where the idea of rolling a ball around a world was something new and interesting. A few ball games have released in the time since, but mainly as a sort of nostalgic throwback to these old games, trying to be improvements or updating the formula, but the magic just doesn't seem to be there anymore. We don't live in the world of the early 2000s, things aren't as colorful now. But just 2 years ago, in 2021, a game was released that took this simple idea of a ball rolling around a game world and brought it to the modern day. Exo One is the first and so far only game released by the indie studio Expletive Games. You play as a ball not rolling around floating platforms, but across entire planets. And I do mean entire planets. The worlds you roll and glide through are anything from lush to barren to frozen, from rolling hills to harsh cliffs to active volcanoes. The ball in this game is, in the story, an alien spaceship, the Exo One, a ship piloted by a human being. We see through flashes a disaster on Jupiter that killed an entire crew, one of the members of which you were in love with. After receiving the blueprints for this ship from a mysterious source, you volunteered to journey out for a way to bring her back. The spaceship you control is able to manipulate gravity. The main mechanic you use in the game is temporarily making gravity stronger, bringing you down to the ground with force and giving you extra momentum in the process. Unlike the puzzly or finicky games before, where the danger presented to you was the fear of falling off the edge, it is impossible to die in Exo One. The goal is simply to reach the beacon at the end of each world, a magnetic launcher that sends you through time and space to whatever next planet the game has in store for you. While you know why you're traveling through these worlds, you don't know why this alien species laid out all of this for you, for humanity, and yet our curiosity pulls us along. The other main feature of this spaceship is the ability to glide. You have a sort of stamina meter that runs out if you do it for too long though, and it can only be refreshed by rolling on the ground or upping the gravity, turning gameplay into a push and pull between being too light and too heavy for the world you're traversing. One of my favorite levels in the entire game is the planet Nautica. After going through the last wormhole, your descent down to Nautica disrupts the asteroid belt around it, causing both you and thousands of meteors to rain down on the planet. The surface, as you might expect, is entirely water, in a game that up until now had you rolling on land. However, your stamina is still refreshed by diving down below, and so the balance on Nautica is dipping down into the ocean and rocketing back out of it. The environments in this game don't only serve as a change in the ground though. The meteors you cause to crash down create shockwaves that blow your ship around. There are clouds that give you lift, letting you soar far above the surface before crashing back down below. The amount of ways to travel these worlds is massive. For a while on Nautica, there's nothing but you, the meteors, and the ocean, but after a while you start to see more alien structures. We're given an identity to the creators of these quote-unquote levels, ones that place boosters and ramps and giant cubes for us to roll down, the level designers being canonized in the universe. Even the ball itself is given a sort of reason to be a ball. As you start to learn more about the ship, becoming familiar with its limitations and abilities, the design makes a lot of sense. Of course the super high-tech alien spaceship is just a ball with fancy mechanics. What else would it be? A ball is efficient. While games of the past would use the balls designed to punish you, Exo One makes it seem elegant, a perfect thing to use. The game goes to great lengths to explore all the sides of this ship and the ballness it has to offer. In Daramulam, you're trapped inside of a ravine, forcing you to move with close quarters in mind. The places you can gain speed are limited, so it forces you to be strategic, looking for good logs to roll through and wind currents to catch. We see mechanics of older ball games adapted to Exo One, but in interesting ways. Instead of collectibles being some arbitrary thing you need to finish a level, it serves as an optional stamina upgrade for your ship. You switch gravity, but instead of switching on 6 planes like a cube, you launch yourself from asteroid to asteroid using its bend. These mechanics that existed in these hypothetical worlds, demonstrations and simulations are given context and meaning. But all these little extra mechanics come second to the real joy of this game, the speed. After 2 decades of getting blue-balled by these engines, Exo One pays it back in force. You go so fast in this game that the screen turns different colors. You break the sound barrier, the screen goes negative, the wind rushes past your ears. There's achievements just for going ridiculously fast and ridiculously high. The aliens put fucking launchers to launch you for fun or whatever because aliens are cool. Yet on top of all this gameplay is this eerily somber feeling. Near the end of Obias 3, a snowy world, your ship can no longer take the planet's harsh conditions and starts to die out. You've seen a flashing beacon in the earlier worlds, but it would always be out of your reach. This time around though, the beacon comes to you. For the first time since the UFO at the end of Ballance, we see another living, moving being. And with our ship stranded and left to die, it fills us with power, enough to launch to the next planet entirely on our own. The final level, Coelas, is nothing but clouds. Any earth and water is long gone. We're now flying in the void that our ancestors tried anything to avoid. We're following an orange light, when presumably there to help us to our goal, a line in the distance, and with enough time and speed, we eventually get there. The orange light jumps ahead of us, and once it reaches the line, unlike the games of the past, Exo One doesn't just end, it explodes. The final rush of this game is flying headfirst into a black fucking hole, an idea unthinkable by the world 20 years ago. The world of Super Monkey Ball and Marble Blast, simple physics in a simple world, crumbled underneath the pure power and scale in front of you. You gain nothing but speed, growing and growing speed, enough to show you every color of the rainbow, beyond fast, beyond space, beyond time. The world disappears behind you, leaping headfirst into this oblivion in front of you, all to save the person you love, all in the faith that this was to help you. And with this blinding speed, everything goes dark. After surviving the dark, you start to see galaxies, then planets. We close in on a planet we know, a planet named Jupiter, right before the time of the accident. This time around, the safety pods worked. This time around, the crew, all 5, are seen gracefully shooting into the distance, back to safety, back to Earth, back to the ones they love, back to you. This is a game about a ball. That's what all of these games are, nothing more and nothing less. An idea so simple is bound to be tied to the technology that we have now. Back when physics engines were impressive, that's all it took to be notable. Ball games were simply demonstrations. But as time went on, as technology shifted, even an idea as simple as this was given the power to be something more. The world of the early 2000s was excited for the future of technology, the things that could be done, the things that could be shown. And while many of these hopes and dreams have been lost or corrupted or deemed impossible, we made this. 20 years later, we are, in some way, living in the future we always dreamed of. And that is how you make a video about balls. Thanks for watching and have a nice day. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more of my stuff in the future, please subscribe to this channel. If you want to support me even further, I have a Patreon that pays out only when I release a video. For just $2 a video, you get a direct line to me and other patrons, a role in my Discord server, any extra content I release, your name at the end of videos, and even a number of goals that I need to fulfill if they're met. If you want to support me, that is the best way to do it. And finally, shout out to my higher tier donors: Jared Chode, Mendel, Wallace de Morinville, Automatic Quail, Brody Larson, Congruent Crib, Connor Fenter, Edmund Dog, SC, Great Value Gaming, I mean, like, come on, that Tommy guy, he's an idiot, he's not even a cat, Justin Eubanks, Lavender, MF Bitchboy, Willem Zimborg, Bestest Patron, Bimpley, Brian Jackson, Clear was here, Gluggle Jug, Carmela Danzin, Landry, Mr. Trolley Moly, No Joke, Oleg, Ribbonaster, Robin Michael Becker, Sess, Shameful, Skelly, the 137 Man, and Eurodin. Jesus. That all being said, I sincerely hope you enjoyed. Thank you and have a nice day.